Hello, my internet peeps. How are you today? This is Scott Rideshare. So, to give you a little bit of behind the scenes, the whole idea behind this channel was supposed to be like an unedited conversation between the two of us, except I'm kind of giving a monologue instead of back and forth. I would always hope that people would make some comments down below, but it, it's just supposed to be kind of like off the cuff, unedited, unscripted, and most of the times I don't even know what I'm going to talk about until until I actually go Scott Rideshare. Then I make my decision on where it is I want the video to go. Just to give you guys a hint of that. Now, initially I was going to be sitting there telling funny stories. The whole idea being that if you're a driver, you can pick up a little bit of tips on how to handle passengers or how to navigate or whatever. And as a passenger, you could pick up some tips on, why your driver canceled on you or why you were having problems, whatever the case may be. And if you just like funny stories, hopefully you'd be entertained. That was the whole idea behind it. So those three people would benefit. Those three types of people would benefit, I was hoping, from my channel. Well, recently I haven't really done a lot of videos, number one. Number two, there hasn't been a lot of very funny videos. So I do want to tell you a funny story. This one happened, I'm going to say 10 months ago, 9 months ago, something like that. And I get the request, and I'm like, it's kind of hard to explain, people. But there's this strip called Las Olas Boulevard. It starts at the beach and goes all the way down, like kind of ends where New River is really. But as far as businesses are concerned, it ends right around the end of downtown Fort Lauderdale. There's a section in there that's like all residential, but it's like really, really rich people. But it's really congested down by the beach, and then it's really congested by downtown Fort Lauderdale. And then the rest of it is just, kind of a clear sail riding through. And I get this request, and this was one of those times where the pickup address was different on my navigation system from where the person was standing, the pin for where the person was standing. So it's in two different spots, not far from each other, but it's a pretty congested area. And I turn on to Las Olas towards the downtown Fort Lauderdale area, at the beginning of it. And in that area, you have on my right-hand side was a very famous restaurant called YOLO. Never been there. Hear a lot of good things about it, but probably a little bit too much out of my price range. Then across the street from that, you have the Royal Pig. A little further down, you have the Lobster Bar, and there's a couple of other places to eat in between there. Bars, restaurants, that kind of stuff. And I turn onto it. I'm heading towards the beach now on Las Olas Boulevard. And I'm kind of coming up to the pin on where the person's standing. And the address is a little further down. It actually said the Lobster Bar. And I see a guy standing on the street, and he's screaming. And he actually kind of reminded me of a boss of mine from a long time ago when I used to work for Herman's Rollers Blankets. He wouldn't be that young today, because the guy was about my age back then. But he was about this guy's age when I knew him, my old boss. But he's in there going, and he's like screaming across the street. And I could see that who he was talking to was a driver who had an Uber sticker. And I said, all right, so I guess those two are together. He's standing right where the pin says I'm supposed to pick up, but I don't really see anyone else around. The woman that was there looks like they're together, so let me head towards the Lobster Bar. So I drive past them, and I go towards the Lobster Bar, and there's no one down there. I mean, it almost looked like the Lobster Bar was closed that night. It's possible. I think it was a Monday night, and I think they closed on Monday, so it's very possible. Anyway, I said, well, let me swing around and try to find the pin drop where the person is, as opposed to the address, because there's no one here. So I drive around the block, and I come back again, and I see the guy. He's still out there talking, and I'm going, well, didn't he have his Uber driver there? I go, maybe this guy is for me. So I pull up, and I asked him if that was his name, and he goes, yeah, and he calls his wife, and they get in the car. And I told them what happened. And they were kind of laughing, but they were also kind of intoxicated. The guy way more so than the lady, but they were pretty drunk. And it's about 7:30 at night. They explained to me that they started drinking. They were on vacation, so why not? And they started drinking around lunchtime. And it's now like 7:30 at night, and they've been drinking like all day long. They were from New York, so we're driving, and we're talking about New York and blah blah blah. I mean, we're having as coherent and fun a conversation as you can with drunk people. If you're ever sober, try to have a conversation with a drunk person. You know what it is I'm talking about, okay? But we're having a good time. It was a lot of fun, right? And on the way to their hotel, they were saying, "Hey, do you know where there's a liquor store?" And I said, "I know exactly where it is. Once you go over the bridge, you're still in Las Olas, you're still heading towards the beach. But once you go over the bridge, you're off the mainland, you're in the Barrier Island. There's a liquor store right there." So I turned in. I don't want to say I made any illegal turns because I don't want to say it, but there's a liquor store right there. So I turned right into the liquor store. And they said, "Hey, we want to get you something. What do you want? Whatever it is, tell us what you want." And I'm like, "No, really, you don't have to." No, come on, tell us what you want." And I said, "Okay, a bottle of white Merlot." And they started cracking up. "White Merlot, does that even exist?" So let me give you a little bit of background here, okay? The first time I heard about white Merlot, I was at my brother's house. And he pulled out a bottle of wine from my mom and says, "Is this right?" And she goes, "Yes, that's the only wine I'll drink, white Merlot." And I don't really know anything about wines. Almost 30 years ago, maybe more than 30 years ago, I worked at a department store called Jefferson's, which no longer exists. And it was a gourmet department that I would occasionally go in and help the guy out. He had wines. But as far as me knowing anything about wines, I heard about, I'm going to butcher this name, it's a French name, Pouilly-Fuissé. I was out with a girlfriend about 25 years ago, and her sister and her boyfriend, the four of us went out to eat, and the boyfriend ordered the wine, a really good wine, okay? It's a little bit too expensive for me to keep buying and stocking, so I don't, but it's one of my favorite wines. And the extent of my knowledge on wine is you kind of get whites for fish and chicken and reds for everything else. I know that's not true, honestly. That's kind of a myth that's out there. People who really know their wines would be able to explain it better. But that's kind of the what I stuck with for my whole life, okay? I remember in New York, too, they had a heavy campaign for another French wine called Clos du Bois. And, yeah, it's good, but, it's not like I'm going to sit there and run around and get it. I remember the name because of the advertising, okay? So the extent of my wines are really not all that knowledgeable. And one day, it was probably about 5 years ago, I decided, because of all this antioxidants and the pulp from the grapes and all that good stuff is good for you, that you should have a glass of wine a night. Not drink it to get drunk, but a glass of wine, right? It's supposed to have health benefits. So I decided I was going to do that. And what I would do is I would go into the store and I would find a wine that was on sale that I didn't have before. So I would get, I don't know, Cavin, Sauvignon Blanc, whatever the heck it's called. I would get that. I would get a rosé. I would get, a different one each time. Now, also, before I started doing this one wine a day thing, there was a time when there was like a Thanksgiving or a Christmas dinner or something, and I was in charge of getting the wine. So I said, all right, I'm going to remember this white Merlot and go get it for my mom. So I walked into the wine section of a wine store, and I'm standing there in the white wine section, and I'm looking for white Merlot. I'm looking up and down the shelves. And the guy comes over to me and he goes, "Sir, can I help you with anything?" And I said, "Oh, yes, please. I'm looking for white Merlot." And he starts explaining to me about the grapes and where they're harvested and listen, it all went over my head. But he directed me to where the white Merlot was. It was in the red wine section. Okay. So now let's fast forward again to me trying different wines per night. And I happened upon the white Merlot in the red wine section, and I bought the bottle and I drank the wine, and I liked the wine. And I continued through trying different wines, whatever happened to be on sale. Well, it turns out my favorite of the whole batch was white Merlot. Now, I still love the Pouilly-Fuissé. I know I'm butchering that. I apologize. But I still love that wine, right? But again, it's a little bit out of my price range. I can get a pretty big bottle of white Merlot for $10. So it tastes good. It's got the wine in it that you need. That's good for you. So that's what I go with, white Merlot. Well, recently, like in the last year and a half, 2 years, I kind of cut wine out of my. I don't do a whole lot of drinking. I'm driving every day, so for the most part, I pretty much don't drink. I don't. There's no alcohol in my place, but anyway, the guy was asking me, "What do you want to drink?" And I said, "White Merlot." Now he must have known that Merlot is a red wine, which I don't. What do I know? He must have known it was a red wine. And when I said white Merlot, he started cracking up. He's like, "What are you talking about? White Merlot? Does that even exist?" And I said, "No, it does exist. The guy behind the counter should know what it is." I go, "It's in the red wine section." And they're cracking up. They go, "Oh, you're making stuff up." And they're laughing and they get out of the car and they go inside. They come out like 5 minutes later and they say, "The guy behind the counter says you're crazy." Because you had us going around. You got us going around the whole store looking for this white Merlot stuff that doesn't exist. That was a good joke. That was a good joke. You got us. You got us. Meanwhile, I really wanted the white Merlot. They gave me water or like a Red Bull or something. I don't know. They brought out something like that. And it was a funny story. I laughed a lot at that story. I still think about it and laugh on how they were in the store. They're talking to the guy behind the counter who he sells alcohol, but he also sells like regular wine too, and he didn't know anything about it. I know the guy in the wine store. He's sitting there explaining to me why it's called white Merlot when it's a red wine, and it just, my eyes rolled back in my head. I was like, "Look, dude, I don't really care. Just give me to the white Merlot." So anyway, I like that story. I hope you like it too. If you like the story, please like, subscribe, share. Send some comments down below. Tell me what an idiot I am because I don't know anything about wine. By the way, I've been drinking wine pretty much my whole life. My dad used to let us have it since I was 8, 9 years old. We'd have like one small glass with dinner. Not all the time. It's not all the time. But every once in a while, we'd have a little small glass. Of course, the drinking age was 9 years old back then, just in case there's any federal authorities out there. But seriously, it was just one glass of red wine before dinner, or white wine, depends. And my dad knew more about wine than I ever did. But that's my story, right? I don't know anything about wines. I love white Merlot, which is a red wine. There's a reason it's called white Merlot. I don't know what the reason is. And white Merlot is a good wine. I like the Pouilly-Fuissé too, but it's a little bit out of my price range for like a regular thing. Maybe anniversaries and stuff like that. But if I'm just buying wine to keep in the house, going with the white Merlot. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. You have a great day. This is Scott Rideshare.